Welcome back to another arena draft here at Tier Zero Gaming with me, Mike Potente. How are you guys today? I am joined by Gabriel Hipp. Hi, Gabriel.
Hello.
So this is our seventh draft, sixth draft on arena at this point. So yeah, let's see how this one goes. We left off the last one with the triple frog deck, which was very exciting that we barely missed the trophy on, but that's okay. That deck was sweet.
Lots of frogs does sound very fun to work with.
It was a delight, and I was happy about it. All right, so we're looking at this pack. I have drafted a lot of green so far. I have drafted Demir exactly once, and I've drafted Boros exactly once, I think. The trophy that I've gotten so far was with the Boros deck, but we know that the green-red Eldrazi deck, the Gruul Eldrazi deck, tends to be the best deck in this limited format. So when we're weighing all of these options, we have to consider, what is likely to be taken by other people at the table and figure what we're more likely to get later in the packs. So Galvanic Discharge, I think, is probably the best card in this pack, but it's also the only red card that's realistically worth looking at. It's the only red card in the pack, even. But in this case, we have the Big Dumb Mythic, and we haven't drafted this yet, and we're not sure really how good this card is. It is a removal spell that then does more stuff later. A pseudo removal spell, a bounce spell. Yeah, if this was present day, I think we just take the Galvanic Discharge. But again, we're still in our first, 10 drafts here, so we take the Big Dumb Mythic and see how good it is. I encourage people in their first few drafts, first, 5, 10 drafts, take the higher rarity cards if you're not sure, because the number of chances you're going to get to play with them is lower than a common like Galvanic Discharge. This pack, we could take the Eldrazi Repurposer, which, is an Eldrazi. With the Ugin's Binding, we're very clearly trying to do things with Eldrazi. Or we can take the Toxic Deluge, which is just kind of the strongest card in the pack. And I like leading off with the removal, personally. I already passed 2 good green cards in pack number 1 with the Dryad and the Horrific Assault. So,
Having removal unlimited, especially if you can get a lot of it early on, is really helpful. Especially going into not knowing what anyone else has picked already in their packs that they're opening.
right. So this pack is kind of like Glasswing Grace versus the Petrifying Meddler versus the Snapping Voidclaw. We have the Yugen's Binding again that kind of like leans us towards Eldrazi, but none of these cards are exciting. We took a Toxic Deluge, which makes us slightly less interested in something like the Voidclaw, but yeah, I'm not excited there, and at least Voidclaw is a Soul Ring, and we're kind of working towards the Ugin's Binding. Is kind of the plan there with the Voidclaw pick. We might wind up abandoning this Toxic Deluge. We might wind up playing it. We'll see what ultimately winds up happening. This pack has 3 of the dual-faced lands, and we take the Stump Stomp. Teamer Eldrazi, when you can kind of splash blue in your Eldrazi deck, is not bad. Or if you splash, red in your blue-green Eldrazi, also works out pretty well. So this pack, I don't think Consuming Corruption should be ranked as highly here, especially when we only have the 1 black card, but, it is what it is. So this one feels to me like it's between the Hydroelectric Specimen and the Malevolent Rumble are the 2 choices. I'm not sure what I ultimately take here. I think now I would probably take the Malevolent Rumble, but I think I might wind up with the Hydroelectric Specimen just based on the first few picks I have. Or I just click back and forth until time runs out and wind up with the Malevolent Rumble. So, that's the one we want anyway, so it works out. Alright, so Wither and Bloom, just the best card in this pack by, I think, a pretty good margin. The 0/4 Sage is fine if you're in the right deck, but It's pretty whatever. And yeah, so this is a 7th pick Cranial Ram, and I think that's kind of enough here with like yeah, pick 7 Cranial Ram. We just kind of take this and then see what we see for the next couple picks. And if we see these black-red cards, then we are just going to immediately cut all of these green and blue cards and just go from here. If we're getting a 7th pick Cranial Ram, it's very likely that we're the only one in the affinity deck. So yeah, we already had the relatively late Wither and Bloom, and we started early with the Toxic Deluge, which all kind of can play in these decks.
Right, and something I've noticed, especially drafting at least the paper format of Modern Horizons 3, is that a lot of the affinity and draw 3 card decks just get passed around because they're not considered good. So most of the stuff that it falls into those decks just gets passed to you anyways.
It's true.
So the deck just kind of builds itself, whether you're going the affinity route or the draw three cards in a turn route, or if you're trying to put them both together.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. The less popular decks, if you do see that they're open, pivoting into them sometimes leads to you being the only one at the table doing the thing. And anytime you're the only one at the table doing a thing, it's good for you. So we took the SCOA over the Phyrexian, the Fetid Gargantua. Sorry, forgot his name for a moment. I'm pretty 50-50 on those two. I think they're both good card. Well, sorry. Neither one of them is a particularly good card, and either one of them is serviceable, and you'll play them in the deck of the appropriate colors.
Sure.
They're kind of like your 21st through 23rd card. If you have too many playables, they get the axe. If you don't quite have enough playables, there they are. So yeah, here we are. We're pretty committed at this point. The Stump Stomp gets to live because it's a red card, and we're kind of just very happy to be moving these non-Rakdos cards out. So we have a Flare of Malice, again, being a rare, and I think, as I said earlier, like, leaning towards the rares to kind of figure out how good they are until you have a better grasp of what you're doing in a format makes an amount of sense to me. Now, like, post 20 drafts or so, I'm probably leaning towards the Pyretic Rebirth. I think that card just puts in a lot of work and gets you a lot of value.
Especially if you can like get something like a
Okay.
Hellkite or a...
And we wind up with the Rebirth anyway, so good on past me for realizing that that card is more powerful than the Flare. This is a pretty easy Siege Gang Commando. Not only is it just a lot of bodies for, the mana that it is, it's also several removal spells, and it's also a good thing to bring back with the Pyretic Rebirth that we just grabbed. Grab your Siege Gang, Siege Gang Commander, Spawn Gang Commander, deal 5 damage to an opposing creature, and then put another 4 bodies into play is a pretty good sequence. It's a very pretty endurance, but not anything close to what we're interested in right now. We're probably just taking, this Sarpadian Simulacrum. Just give me the dumb 1-mana artifact. We don't have any of the pigeons yet, but, that's the kind of thing that we're looking to grab at some point in these drafts.
The Terminators can also put in some work, especially towards late game.
Yeah.
All the artifacts in play.
All of the 1-mana artifact creatures are worth playing in the Affinity deck. The Sarpadian Simulacrum, the Retrofitted Transmigrant, and the Terramander, as you were saying.
Yeah.
You need some amount of them to make sure that your deck is capable of doing what you need it to do when it comes to the cards that actually have affinity or powering up your Cranial Rams.
Right.
This one feels like a pretty easy Molten Gatekeeper. The green cards are good, but we are very clearly moved away from that as a game plan. This pack doesn't really have much that we're interested in. We don't really want a second SCOA. Void Pouncer isn't particularly good when you don't expect to have colorless mana regularly. So yeah, just the landscape that fetches both of our colors is where we want to be for that pack. The Eviscerator's Insight here is kind of the only card in our colors at all, which is a little unfortunate, but card's fine. We can sacrifice some of these little 1-drop idiots that aren't good anymore. We can get some blocks in and, do what we gotta do. Here we have a Fetid Gargantua versus a Drowned Yard Lurker, I guess. None of these are terribly exciting. We're taking the Gargantua here. Give me another 5-drop that can draw me some cards. We have the Creation of Avacyn, which is just a bad, slow tutor. I'm not a big fan of this card at all. I am very unlikely to play it unless I have, like, some very specific bomby card that I really want an extra copy of, because this thing not only doesn't just put it into your hand, it takes 3 turns, and only does so if it makes it all the way through to the 3rd chapter.
Right, and
So,
if it's a creature that you're tutoring for, it does hurt you for all of
exactly.
that mana, so it's
Correct.
really bad.
Yeah. We wound up wheeling the Flare of Malice, so definitely a good thing that we took the Pyretic Rebirth there. Glad to play the Flare. Grim Servant versus Inventor's Axe. This is... I think I just want the artifact here, though Grim Servant is fine. Like, we wouldn't be upset. We're going to play probably either one. But again, with the Affinity deck, you want the low-to-the-ground cards. I'm less interested in 4-drops than I am in 1 and 2 mana spells. So this is uncommon into the sideboard. None of this is playable. And we move on. So, waiting for the last couple picks of this pack. Based on the way this pack went, I think the pivot was correct. There was a couple pretty okay green cards, but it dried up very quickly.
It sure did.
So it certainly feels like we were paid off a little bit better by moving into the black-red deck. We could still stand to have either more Cranial Rams or some of the Pigeons, some more of the affinity payoffs.
Right.
Right now we have the curve that makes this deck okay, but not really the payoffs. Here's the second Cranial Ram, and we are absolutely going to take this, pick one. We just want the Ram. Man, that Writhing Chrysalis is almost worth splashing for, but we're going to take the second Spawn Gang Commander over it.
Which makes sense.
It's hard to pass a Writhing Chrysalis.
It sure is.
Especially when we're half colors. We already have the Stump Stomp, too. Alright, this pick is tough. Galvanic Discharge versus Amped Raptor versus Spawn Gang Commander. We already have 2 Spawn Gang Commanders, so we're pretty off of that. But we're a little light on removal. We do have the Toxic Deluge to clean up a lot of things. We have a Wither and Blood, we have a Fanged Flames. And that's it, right? And then the Skoa on 6. Yeah.
As well as the Flare.
We do have the Flare, but the Flare isn't targeted. It's going to hit the thing we want it to hit most of the time, but not all of the time.
Right.
Yeah, I like Past Me's decision here. Take the Galvanic Discharge. It's sad to pass the Amped Raptor and the extra Spawn Gang Commander, but it's also possible that we wind up wheeling one of those two, just because, they're 2 very powerful red cards coming around. So, this pack, I don't see anything that I'm particularly interested in playing. We could, just take the land.
Another Cranial Ram. Let's
Very
go,
happy
dude.
to grab this third Cranial Ram. This card is kind of exactly what we're looking for where we're at. We need the pressure. We need to be able to be attacking. The Lethal Throwdown is fine. I just said a moment ago that we're a little light on removal, and now we're about where we want to be. We have 5 decent pieces of removal in the deck, not counting the Spawn Gang Commander or the Skoa.
Lethal Throwdown notably being really good with the Cranial Rams and the Dross Claw if you can pick one up.
Yeah.
Because you can sacrifice the token and then still equip the equipment to something else, and you
While
still get the
drawing a
benefits
card.
off
Absolutely.
the Lethal Takedown. So it's really good for the Affinity deck to have that in there.
Yeah. Very good point. Also true with the Inventor's Axe. Being able to move that around without costing you mana is definitely worthwhile. So I take the Ral and the Implicit Maze over the second Retrofitted Transmigrant. We already have 3 1-mana artifacts, and we haven't seen a Pigeon, and we're down to, the last pick of the pack, so we're not going to wheel any because none existed. So it's either we get 1 in this last pack or we don't get any at all. So I'm a little bit more interested in the higher power level card rather than the extra 1-mana artifact. given that information. So this Consuming Corruption still sucks, but we are happy to take this Wither and Bloom. That's the second one of those as well, which, again, perfectly happy to have. The Nightblade is bad, but if you're going to play it, it's okay in the deck with a bunch of Germ tokens.
It sure is.
We'd rather cut it. But we also have double Spawn Gang Commander.
Frogmere Enforcer wield.
Yeah, Frogmere Enforcer versus Glimpse the Impossible. I think either one of them would have been fine. Neither one of them's like exciting for this deck in particular. The second Fetid Gargantua gives us maybe even more top end than we actually care about. We now have five drops and a Skoa, which is a bit high, but okay. Second Eviscerator's Insight. We have Germs, we have tokens from Spawn Gang. I don't think we're going to play both, but it's not the worst pickup. So, Draftsmith over here making a few suggestions. I'm trying to go through real quick before I bother seeing what Draftsmith wants me to do and get the first handful of cuts out of here. The Nadir's Nightblade, yeah, I said was very likely to go. And Draftsmith wants me to cut both of the Fetid Gargantuas. I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I think I like... The Gargantua is good to have as a top end of your curve.
It sure is. Having the ability to go, I'm going to play this 4/4, and then next turn I'm going to draw 2 cards, even though I'm losing 2 life.
Yeah.
It's still really good, especially if you have no cards in hand, which sometimes happens with Affinity, just playing all the cards out.
Well, one other thing to consider, too, is that we have these double Eviscerator's Insights. And I think, yeah, we're checking our creature count, and 8 now is not a lot of creatures. Now, that said, 8 is not technically correct, because we also have the Ral in the Implicit Maze, which on its third chapter makes a creature. We have 3 Cranial Rams, which come into play making the Germ token. So we do have more creatures than what the deck thinks it has, but less creatures than we realistically want. So for that reason as well, I think it's worth trimming at least on the Eviscerator's Insight to bring in the Fetid Gargantua. We don't really want to cut the removal spells. Removal can keep you in games that you're otherwise behind in, but also they can, push you ahead in games that are maybe starting to stall or break you through a board. Opponent thought they had a good attack, a removal spell blunts their attack and opens up a crackback.
Sure does.
So, yeah, I think in this case we're leaning towards cutting out some number of these Eviscerator's Insights in favor of some number of the Fetid Gargantua. I think personally, I would probably do 1 and 1, maybe even both Fetid Gargantuas. But the Eviscerator's Insight being a way to blunt your opponent's removal as well as being a way to dig through your deck, and 2 mana plus flashback. I like having 1 in a deck like this. Especially when we have things like retrofitted Transmigrant that we can sacrifice and get back later. Plus the Pyretic Rebirth. So looking at the mana count, where are we at? 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 counting the 2 dual lands. That might be a little greedy. Yeah, I think that might be a little too greedy. We'll see what past me ultimately decides. I think I want 17, including the 2 modal dual-faced cards. So add 1 of the lands back, maybe. Put in a Fetid Gargantua over a land, and then maybe trim 1 of the insights for the second Gargantua. Something along those lines. So, anyway, yeah, I think think I want to cut an insight for the second Gargantua. I think that's where I'm landing on this.
Right.
17 lands, including the dual-faced cards. I think I should add a land back here. And again, that's present me. We'll see what past me decides. I do have... Yeah, especially if I'm doing this, like, I do put myself at the point where I have five mana spells in my deck. We're not counting the Frogmere Enforcer because it costs 3 at most if you need to cast the thing. And we do have a bunch of the 1 and 2 mana. I didn't see what I did. I think I just added a land back. Alright, so we kept the 2 Eviscerator Insights over the second Gargantua. That's fine. That keeps less 5s in the deck. So, no real big problem there. This hand doesn't really do anything, but it doesn't die right away either. We have multiple kill spells to make sure that we don't just get run over. And obviously we have a bunch of reasonable top decks. Land off the top is kind of like the opposite of a good top deck here.
At least it's a swamp, though, not another mountain.
True. That does mean that we have the opportunity to play pretty much all of our spells. So. Yeah, we just want to kill the Mana Dork. If you're familiar with the saying, bolt the bird, bolt the bird. We do have the Toxic... We did top deck the Toxic Deluge, so we could let them play something off of the Priest, but if they went, like, Mountain Writhing Chrysalis, suddenly we have to Toxic Deluge for X equals 5, and I don't want to do that if I don't have to.
It's not a great feeling going into that.
Yeah, so... I like this. We didn't draw the the 5th land, so we just use this, get one of these Cranial Rams down. It is only a 1/1, but that's okay. Propagator Drone. One of my favorite cards in this set. Card looks real innocuous until those spawns start being 3/4s and 4/5s.
Right, and the fact that it triggers off its own cast is it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it gives all of the creatures evolve while it's entering the battlefield, so it does, in fact, evolve them. Obviously, we have no blocks here. We're not just going to throw away our Germ to stop 2 damage. So, alright, so we now have more answers to clear this drone out. I almost just want a Toxic Deluge, like, save the Toxic Deluge to clear out a bigger board from our opponent. Like, yeah, just boop in for 1. We have Wither and Bloom in case anything crazy happens. We have the Pyretic Rebirth, but we have no creatures in our graveyard. If we draw a land next turn and our opponent just plays like another 2/2 and evolves their token, we can just rouse away their whole board. So Toxic Deluge is kind of the way we make sure that we clear the board, and rouse might just do it anyway if we can get there. So, Kozilek's Unsealing. This is a card that I have not gotten to draft, I think, at all. Or at least I don't remember playing it. Just the ability to play lots and lots of spawns, and eventually draw lots and lots of cards. The fact that it Ancestral Recalls, draws 3 cards, just anytime you cast a big Eldrazi is kind of wild. So we draw the land, which makes this Rouse look real good here. Clean up your stuff, the Propagator Drone and the tokens. My opponent is down to 2 cards in hand. That said, we have never drawn a second artifact in our relatively artifact-heavy deck.
Nor another creature, which is also kind of hurtful at the moment.
Yeah, it's not ideal. We also put 3 counters on that idol, which isn't like the scariest thing in the world, but it's not good either.
Sure isn't.
What do we discard here? Probably the Wither and Bloom. Like, our hand is literally just a bunch of removal. We can discard the Wither and Bloom to draw 2 off the Ral and the Implicit Maze. We can Fanged Flames away the Brood Scale so that it gets exiled instead of dying, so there's no tokens there. We can also discard this land and just save all our stuff. We don't really need much beyond 5, right? 2 lands. Perfect.
Perfect.
So yeah, I think we just want to Fanged Flames away the 3/3. It exiles it. We have not, as of yet, found a way to deal with this idol if it becomes active. And we're going to get a weird here in a minute, but our hand is all spells, which helps us grow the weird. Hiya. No attacks. Alright. Alright, I think... Yeah, I think maybe we should Fanged Flames. I'm pretty sure what I was considering here is that my hand is all spells, and I have no real pressure. And using those spells to get the weird to grow was something I was interested in doing.
Which is fair.
Yeah, the issue here is that my opponent kind of gets to chunk in, and if I kill the thing, they're just getting closer to their idol being online. And I don't, as of yet, have a good way to deal with the idol. So, we take 3, which means that we didn't attack and didn't block, which is one of the easiest ways to lose games of Magic. But we don't need colorless, so we're going to pop this landscape to just thin our deck of a land. Yet another removal spell. We get a weird, which is nice. And now, at least... notably, the Ral's exile. When it exiles the 2 cards, you have 2 turns to play them. The turn it does it, and the following turn. So we did get both of the land drops off of the Ral's, at least.
Which is very nice, unlike most impulses where you see 2 lands go to the exile and it's like only one of them is playable. And if you've already hit your land drop, neither of them are.
Yeah, well, the good news is the Ral's happens at the beginning of your turn. So...
An extra bonus for it.
You're pretty much always going to get your land drop there. So, we don't get to Fanged Flames here, which is a little unfortunate, because we went to combat first. We are still going to get to kill their creature and, not care about the signature slam, but the fact that we didn't Fanged Flames means that opponent is getting to, pause us while we can't use the sorcery. That said, if we had gone for the Fanged Flames, they would have responded with the signature slam, and then we're stuck using a second removal spell, which is not ideal.
Signature slam was card return, though, wasn't
it? No, this is my combat.
Oh, never mind then. My bad.
No. So we attack, they block. They're just trying to get their idol online. Annihilator 2 is a bunch. Yeah. Their top deck was a land, which doesn't really do anything. They now have the requisite number of spawn tokens to be able to turn the idol into an active creature. And we will clear it. Like, we have the ability to clear the idol with the Toxic Deluge, but first we have to sacrifice 2 things and probably chump block. And that's not a happy place to be.
No.
So, Skoa here, shoot face. There's no reason to pick at the tokens. The tokens are going to go away here in a second anyway. The most likely thing that happens here is we attack with both of our creatures, and opponent just blocks both, sacrifices the tokens, gets 2 more counters in the idol, untaps, sacrifices the last token, and has the idol active. So, what we can do here, because we have the Galvanic Discharge, is block with the Skoa and Discharge. And that'll clear the idol. We'll have to sacrifice either the germ and a land or 2 lands to the Annihilator trigger. But at the end of the day, that's not the worst case scenario. Again, our hand is all removal, so depending on how these next couple turns play out, we have a pretty good chance at just being able to clear whatever our opponent does. Like, that thing we absolutely don't care about. Not that it matters, since opponent has no cards in hand, but they very well could have just sacrificed the spawn so that they still had an island untapped. But again, that's super doesn't matter. Yeah, sacrifice 2 lands. We still have 5 lands, which puts us at the top end of our deck, since we already cast the Skoa. Oh, that's an 8/8. That's why we left the germ back. For whatever reason, in my head, it was a 6/6 just now. But yeah, okay. So we leave the germ back, and we clear it with the galvanic discharge, which is still the line that I was saying. Opponent has no cards in hand, so we know that this is going to work. We also get to grow our weird, which is kind of our win condition in this case. You know. Bing, bing, everything dies, and now we also have our Pyretic Rebirth online to regrow the Skoa and deal 6 damage. The 6th land is kind of a bonus. It just means we get to play the Skoa again after. So, yeah. We just do this now. Clear the blocker, grow the weird, get in for 5. We have a 3-turn clock as it is. I'm reasonably certain it's correct to equip the Cranial Ram and get in for the extra point of damage. We're not casting Fanged Flames since it's a sorcery anyway.
Right.
So here we go. 6 points of damage in. Depending on what opponent draws, we can kill them next turn. We have double Wither and Bloom in the graveyard, which is 2+1/+1 counters. If they play a blocker, we can Fanged Flames it plus the Wither and Bloom counter. So, and opponent draws a land and says good game. They're going to make me play it out, which is fine. Well, yeah. So we just attack and just play the Skoa. If opponent just drew a land, we had it locked up, and we can just click buttons, basically.
Yeah.
So there we go. We get game 1 here. Lots of removal versus lots of mana.
A lot of mana.
A lot of mana. That game kind of demonstrates why I'm not a big fan of the idol. Opponent spent a lot of mana and a lot of time making tokens with the idol, as opposed to doing literally anything else. And then the idol, it got to attack once, and it traded with a bunch of permanents, but none of that mattered.
Not really, no, not when it came to endgame.
That said, my start was also very slow, otherwise they probably don't have time to get that idol off in the first place.
Fair enough.
If I had Terramander on turn 1 instead of any of the things I did have, and that thing is getting to attack with flying and get a Cranial Ram on it, then that game gets closed out pretty quickly before any of opponent's decisions really matter. So, I'm not a big fan of the idol. I'm sure some people have made very good use of it, and they're going to yell at me later, but that's okay. So, we have a 3-land hand, but it does literally nothing.
Absolutely nothing at the moment.
So what we're trying to do here, with the reason we have the deck list pulled up, we're just trying to have a look at, what our odds are of drawing something in that 1 to 3 mana range that we can do before, our cards become blank pieces of cardboard.
Right. And we draw something. A little Charge-a-Bug, dude.
Little bug. He's just a little guy.
He's menacing, though.
He is. And he makes other things pretty menacing.
Sure does. Especially that Fetid Gargantua. But you can draw into lands to play it.
Yeah. So, obviously we need some lands here. But we do have this Eviscerator's Insight. There's a Transmogrant, which is actually just excellent. We get to play the Transmogrant. We can sacrifice it to the Eviscerator's Insight after declaring a free block. No attacks here. We have Menace, but...
They have 2 blockers.
Yeah, they have 2 blockers. We're not really interested.
It's fair.
It does go to show why the Eldrazi Repurposer is so dang good, though. Snap block here with the with the Transmogrant, so that we can Insight and just draw 2. Again, we're looking for lands here, or we're looking for spells that we can cast with 3 mana.
Right.
So, no lands, not ideal. Second Repurposer is kind of scary. These things just being 3 mana 3/3s that ramp you and just make so many bodies is kind of wild. So I understand that we're playing a little bit land light. We have 17 lands, including the modal dual-faced cards, but we did just go, we kept a 3-land opening hand, and we're on turn 4, so we've drawn 4 cards, plus the 2 extra from the Insight, and just not finding any land in the top 6 cards of our library is a little sad. we take risks, right? We kept this hand knowing that we were holding a bunch of cards that we couldn't cast, but
Right.
yeah, I feel like I'm going to like do that thing that many Magic the Gathering players, including myself, do when a game is just not going their way, and make like two plays, not draw land, and then just concede. Just I don't want to play this game. It's not worth my time. And then we're gonna, yep, that. None of my plays really matter. I have to sacrifice my board to clear a 6/6. You can move that thing onto one of your other creatures. I am going to die no matter what I do because I can't cast my spells. Good day, sir. I said good day. So, on to the next match. We have a Cranial Ram and a Simulacrum, which means we actually have a curve that does something this game.
A much better hand than the last game.
Yeah. Boop. Opponent, get booped. Ram. Nope, not Swamp. Ram. Boop again. And yeah. So our draw step's not really, like our draw step was not very good. We don't want a 6-drop here, but, it is what it is. So opponent didn't do anything, so this is just in with our dudes and see what happens. Cool. Go. If they have a removal spell or a bounce spell or similar, we just Eviscerator's Insight. We don't need these creatures to be in play. So yeah. 3 damage a turn is way better than 1 damage a turn.
It sure is.
Turns out. Yeah. So, yeah, just my child was talking to me at the time. So, apologies for the delay passing the turn. So, yeah. Another Kozilek's Unsealing. Hopefully, this card does something. Also, hopefully, this card doesn't do anything, because I don't want my opponent to, like, do stuff. Yeah, so opponent isn't spending a removal spell, so we don't get to, like, get the extra value of bricking something from our opponent, but we also have no action, and I think it's worthwhile to get 2 cards deeper into our library to try to find some action. We're sitting here with a 5-drop and a 6-drop in our hand. We just want to...
Right.
We just want to dig. So here we still get to get in for 3. There's no change. We have this Wither and Bloom up now that we drew off of the Eviscerator's Insight. And yeah, the Simulacrum just kind of doing its thing. We get to play Skoa in a couple turns if we find another land. We get to play the Spawn Gang Commander regardless of whether we find another land, as we have the 5th one rolled up. An Oozewag is not the scariest thing in the world, but 2 spawns. Hey, the Kozilek's Unsealing did stuff this game, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Sure. That felt weird, but fine, I guess. So, yeah, we Wither and Bloom, clear the Repurposer. We have the Skoa, but we can't cast it yet. We don't have anything in our graveyard to get back with the Pyretic Ritual. We can just sacrifice the Simulacrum to clear the Oozewag before they can adapt. But if we do that, we're kind of getting off of our aggressive game plan. I think it still might be worth doing, though. Like, the Kozilek's Unsealing with the ability to draw 3 cards, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get out from under that value. Yeah, okay. Alright, so we make our Simulacrum a 4/3. If our opponent wants to trade with the Oozewag, that's fine. This leaves us enough mana to still be able to cast the Molten Gatekeeper post-combat. So, we clear the Oozewag either way. We are down a Wither and Bloom in our graveyard, but we are up a creature being in play, which was the trade-off, as opposed to having just sacrificed the Simulacrum to clear the Oozewag. If we had done that, we don't have any plays for the turn.
Right.
And we don't have any creatures left. So, Not that this gatekeeper is ever getting through a Kozilek's unsealing with bodies. Yeah, like this. So many things just happened and none of them were good for me.
None of them.
Oh, good. An insight.
Hopefully we can draw a takedown.
So we're going to cast the Spawn Gang Commander because we can't do anything else. And then we're going to hope that throwing things at our opponent's face works.
It might. That
I mean,
that Molten Gatekeeper did just
yeah.
get a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of damage
No,
in.
we're nugging our opponent for 4 here. We basically just cast a Skoa.
Yeah.
So we pass the turn here. We don't really need to do much. We can take 7 from the Lurker. We're at a healthy 20. So, like, we're not scared of a hit. The problem is our opponent just refueled their hand while also making it nearly impossible for me to get through on the ground. So we have the Skoa that's in hand that can potentially get some points of damage across. It's worth 5 with the Molten Gatekeeper. We have the spawn tokens that can be thrown at our opponent. And now we're in full-on race mode because now we don't get the option of jump blocking.
Because they now have a 12/12 Trampler.
Yeah.
With Vigilance.
Yes. All of that. So we have 4 damage with the Spawn Gang Commander as it is. Assuming we untap. So we have to take 12 here. We have the option to block with the Molten Gatekeeper and just soak up 3 of it, but that kinda doesn't matter. Maybe we were supposed to chump there. So this is a land for next turn, which means if we don't die this turn, we survive. Unfortunately, it looks like we die this turn. If we had chumped with the Gatekeeper, we still die this turn, so none of that changes. Alright, so what can we do? We can sacrifice a spawn, pay a mana, throw a spawn at our opponent. We can sacrifice a spawn, pay a mana, throw the Spawn Gang Commander at our opponent. Opponent is at 4. We can't Skoa until next turn, and we can only soak up 4 damage because we can equip the Cranial Ram to the Molten Gatekeeper, which is exactly lethal. They have 8 damage coming through because of the trample. We can not cast Skoa, or we can cast Skoa and deal 4 to them. 5 to them. They would have gone to 3. Then we can block with the Skoa and the Molten Gatekeeper. But we're down one of our colorless sources, so we don't have the last point of damage from the commander. Yeah, every way I line this up, we're 1 point short or 1 mana short. If that had been an untapped land, I think we can win this game. Because we can double block with the Skoa and the Molten Gatekeeper, and then use the or Spawn Gang Commander. And then our opponent tells us we can't block, and none of it matters. But we did a bunch of math.
Sure did. The math was we die.
That math was 1 point short every way I looked at it.
Uh-huh.
We have a 1/1 in our graveyard for this Pyretic Ritual. I would like this swamp, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're dead. We're very dead. Our opponent has killed us. So we can't block. We are unable to block. So, yep, click. Click. Yeah. Oh, okay. Uh, I think I didn't realize that the thing said that my creatures without flying can't block. All right, so what are we like 1 and 2? We're not doing great with this one so
Yeah,
far.
1 and 2, 1 and 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we turn around here.
Well, we only have one of our colors of mana, so it
Right.
ain't gonna be with this hand.
That's an easy mulligan. Yeah, that looks a little bit better.
But not by much.
Not by much, though.
This hand is poo poo. Like, yeah, like the lethal throwdown doesn't do anything if we don't have something to sacrifice. I would rather keep the 4 lands, considering the rest of our hand is 2/5 drops. This Skoa has come to my hand every single game while I don't have mana. It's crazy.
It's kind of funny how
It is drawn to my mana light hands. It wants to remind me that I played it in a deck with 17 lands.
and no other Skoas.
Right, so we know it's this one. It is this one in particular that is drawn to me. This is not the stalker I asked for.
And
Alright.
we finally get a playable card in the Charge Bug.
Woo, it's only on turn 4. The good news is, our opponent has played two toughness or less creatures, and we have a Rel and the Implicit Maze rolled up in our hand. So if our opponent plays, what, a Hexgold Slith or similar this turn, we just get to do a little happy dance. That's not a Hexgold Slith or whatever.
No, it's not.
Uh-huh. 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 The good news is they did spread out these counters, so the Rouse is going to get to both clean up 2 creatures and 2 exalted counters, which makes the 1/4 significantly less scary considering my charge bug can block it as a 2/5.
Uh-huh.
Pretty much all day. Opponent uses their last energy to loot here. And at least we're not just dead.
That is very much true.
Yeah. So we can attack for 1 and let our opponent attack for 2. We can not attack and, yeah, just block. We're behind on life. We also have, like, well, during our opponent's draw step, less cards in hand than they did. So, that card is nearly unbeatable in my experience. Obviously, you can beat that card if you just clear it before anything major happens. But being 5 toughness, Fanged Flames doesn't get rid of it. We drew another land, which is, perfect. Okay. These are all cards, I guess. So, yep, land for turn. So I think we have to play the Fetid Gargantua here. Awkwardly. I guess not. Shoot this thing. They get another flying merfolk. Moonfolk? Moonfolk. Alright, so hear me out. I think what we needed to do there was play the Fetid Gargantua so that on the following turn we could adapt the Gargantua and then stomp down the Genku.
Which would have dealt with that big old beast.
Yeah, like, as it is, opponent could have just paid a bunch of mana to put counters on everything, and then they're looking at a 3/6 with 2/2/3s with flying, and I'm very unlikely to be able to win from there. That Kappa Cannoneer is also a bit of a problem. We have a weird good. We don't have anything big enough to stomp either the Genku or the Kappa Cannoneer, which is the problem here. And this is why I was saying I think we needed to play the Fetid Gargantua there. So, yeah, we play the little fella. we stare at this Stump Stomp that doesn't quite do what we need it to do. And then we, attack in with the Charge Bug and the Skoa? They're not going to block the Skoa if we give it Menace, but they can double block the Charge Bug pretty free, and then the Skoa gets to murder the Genku. Or they just don't block because they don't want to lose their thing, and the Stump Stomp still gets to murder the Genku. Alright. So we got a little lucky there.
A little bit, yeah.
We do have to deal with this Kappa Cannoneer and these 2 flyers. My board does not do any of that at the moment.
No, it does not.
If they don't have an artifact, the Cannoneer doesn't really have any good attacks here. Like, we can just trade off our Frogmere Enforcer and Weird for the Cannoneer.
Yeah.
And, like, 2 a turn isn't the most pressure when we have a Skoa kind of chilling.
Right.
Shooting down the Charge Bug, I'm not sure why that's the decision from our opponent. I don't know what the Charge Bug does that's scarier than the 4/4 or the Weird that potentially gets bigger over the course of the game.
Way to deal with one of those Moonfolk.
I don't care about the Moonfolk. My creatures deal with them by virtue of being bigger and attacking into them.
Right.
What this Wither and Bloom lets me do is attack with my things and be able to clear the Kappa Cannoneer. Like, we can pay for the ward.
This is Ward 4, doesn't it?
Yeah, who cares?
This big number for no reason.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, I'm sure you've heard people say this thing basically has hexproof because it's Ward 4. As evidenced by this turn,
It doesn't.
no.
It doesn't.
No, hexproof would have made that very sad.
Uh-huh.
But it didn't have hexproof, and now that thing is dead.
And now they're stupid.
And now my opponent is conceding, yeah. I think the turn they shot down my Charge Bug, they should have cleared either the Weird or the Skoa. Kind of like dealer's choice. If you deal with the Weird, you can attack with the Kappa Cannoneer. Because I don't have the double block available anymore.
Right.
And if you deal with the Skoa, that's just the biggest body that I have in play at the moment. Although the Weird is likely to get bigger than it over time.
Right.
So, yeah, I think the missequence on my end of not getting the potential 6/6 into play led to a turn where I got to get value off of the Charge Bug, which maybe made my opponent more scared of it than they needed to be.
Right.
So, I guess it's possible that my missequence wound up helping me.
Sure.
You know, by virtue of putting the fear of something in my opponent. But in any case, we were very worried we weren't going to be able to use that Stump Stomp, and then it turned out we got to. So.
Right.
Alright, this hand looks way better than the last hand. We have a 1-drop into a 2-drop. We can play this Frogmere Enforcer on for 1 mana, I guess, next turn. Wait, isn't that thing 3 for the prototype?
Nope.
Is it 4?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Never mind. We can still play it.
Just costs 1 more.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought it was 3. Whatever. Anyway, there's a Basking Brood scale. We're going to attack. They're going to block. Yeah, we're going to Eviscerator's Insight.
Bye.
Which unfortunately means we get 1 less damage in from the Cranial Ram, but, like, our hand wasn't really doing much. We'd rather get some cards deeper. And if we can throw away the Transmigrant specifically to draw some cards, that's fine. Opponent is, I don't know, very likely to be adapting this turn, which means we're not getting in again for a second anyway. And we drew the Toxic Deluge, so I suppose we almost want our opponent to kind of go wide here.
Another Idol of the False
Another
Gods.
idol that is sitting here doing nothing instead of letting my opponent advance their board. So, yeah. You've got an idle opponent. Pretty sure we just attack. No, do that after you declare attackers. They might have not realized and blocked.
It would have been really
It
funny.
would have been so much better for me. Yeah, see, we're attacking anyway. We should have attacked first and see if they notice. Bad me. So, adapt. Adapt. Arena doing that cool thing where it tapped all my opponent's colored sources.
Really funny. We love that.
Alright, so they're showing Island plus thing, which never really ideal to cast spells into. Uh, between Aether Spike and Hope Ender Coatl. Like, opponent does in fact have 3 mana up here, and I really don't want to get this Spawn Gang Commander Hope Ender Coatl, but at least it comes with 3 bodies.
What would also hurt is consigned to memory.
Yeah, that's true. I'm partial to this. Get the Molten Gatekeeper down. That makes the Spawn Gang Commander that much better.
Right. Makes it a better SCOA in this case.
Yeah, kinda. Though Skoa does get to clear blockers out of the way, and Gatekeeper does not.
Sure.
So we can attack here as well. Now that the Cranial Ram, the Germ Token just trades with the Brood Scale. The reason that we're playing the Frogmere Enforcer pre-combat is so that we don't have to ping ourselves with the Barbarian Ring. That's realistically all it is. We could attack, and if our opponent trades with one of our creatures, then suddenly the Frogmere Enforcer costs the extra mana, which is not that big a deal, but certainly, like, our opponent is going to be trying to get this idol online, so those extra points of life can sometimes be the difference in a game. The Frogmere Enforcer has not been looking as great in this deck as I was hoping it would be. Huh. That's a weird play from opponent. If their plan is to make a token with the idol, then they should have done that before they played the Propagator Drone.
Right.
But they could also have the Hope Ender Coatl that we were talking about. And so they're trying to leave their mana up at all times. This Spawn Gang Commander should find out for us whether or not they have the Coatl. Boop. 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 They didn't have the Coatl.
It appears not.
There's no world where that card resolves if they have it, right? Yeah, turn everything sideways. And obviously the reason to cast our spells pre-combat here is get the damage from the Gatekeeper
Right.
before they potentially double block it, and then we don't get the damage. Double blocking the card that comes back from my graveyard seems wild to me.
Seems really funny, especially with the Propagator Drone.
Yeah, like I'm not sure I get this block personally. I guess this one costs me 4 mana to get back from my graveyard, whereas the Gatekeeper only costs 1. Maybe that's their line of thinking. Just make me spend more mana.
Right.
But I don't know. There's still 4 counters away from that idol being active, and our board is very wide and has the ability to go face both with the Spawn Gang Commander and potentially the Barbarian. Yeah,
And
okay.
they scoop it up.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a weird game. Opponent did not a lot with their mana for several turns.
Well, that was something that we saw with the other game of the person trying to get their idol online. It feels like that card just takes way too much priority from the opponent.
Just cost them too many resources to try to get online.
Right.
Yeah, that could be true. So we're at 3 wins. So one more win, and we have the break-even draft, the good old 1,400 of your 1,500 gems back. So 1 win away from this draft being, not terrible.
Right.
Considering we're on like an 11 creature build or 12 creature build of what is supposed to be an aggressive deck. We'll take 4 wins. 4
Sure.
wins would be nice.
Pretty decent hand with the Transmogrant, followed by
Transmigrant
Cranial
into
Rim.
Ram is kind of what we built the deck to be capable of doing. The Eviscerator's Insight to get us deeper into the deck. We have one red source because of the landscape. We do need the second one to play the Rals, but we're in no real hurry to do that. The biggest downside here is we can't play the Cranial Ram on 2 because we don't have the natural red source. So we
Right.
either have to play the Transmigrant on 1 or the Cranial Ram on 2, but we can't do both. So we're in a mirror. Opponent also had a Transmigrant on 1. They're on the play, which certainly favors them. Do you like trading there? Or do you like just taking the damage and keeping your own board as well?
I like trading there, especially with the Transmogrants. They are on the play though, so they have more mana than me, so it
Yeah.
definitely feels bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like that no block. I think maybe I should have traded. I think the other thing I might have been thinking about is that like I have this Eviscerator's Insight with nothing to sacrifice to it. So if I just make this trade, I'm just not doing anything.
Right.
Whereas like with this, I have the option to either crack to go get the red source or have the Eviscerator's Insight.
Yeah.
But if I was going to Eviscerator's Insight my thing, I think I should have left it back as a blocker. I'm not sure. Either way, this game is going badly. Opponent went 1-drop, 2-drop Lelia. And yeah, the Lelia plays off of the amulet plays off of the Lelia, and we're probably gonna die.
Sure does
This
look that
Cranial
way.
Ram isn't doing anything, so like, you know, drawing 2 cards versus fetching my red source makes sense right now. We're gonna play the Ram because it blocks for a turn, I guess. But yeah, I don't like our odds of winning this game.
It does not look great at the moment.
Our mana didn't really cooperate, and opponent went, 1, 2, 3 on the play, with the 3-drop being one of the better 3-drops in the format. I have to imagine the win rate for a turn 3 Lelia is pretty high. We're just gonna block and save 4 points of life because if we don't, we're gonna die. But we need to draw something that clears that Lelia now-ish, because that Ral sure doesn't do it. And we're 2 lands away from the Rals. Yep. We have no plays. We have actual no plays. We can put the Transmigrant into play tapped.
And that doesn't do anything.
So 3-3.
Yeah.
3-3 is not 4-3.
Sure isn't.
That's it's not a great result. We're not thrilled about it, but the deck was kind of mediocre.
A little bit. But
Um,
that's kind of what you get when you go for the affinity play, because the deck has very high like highs and very low lows when
Yeah.
it does
Like our
perform.
opponent's draw that game shows you kind of what some of the highs can look like.
Right.
Like opponent getting to curve out and just put on pressure on the play is one of the reasons to be in the affinity archetype.
Right.
And we sort of could do that, but a lot of our draws throughout those 6 games didn't really lend themselves to that. I think in 2 of the 6 games we had 1 drop into Cranial Ram. Maybe it was 3 out of 6, which is okay, but not the kind of like you need to be doing that very consistently for the
Right.
deck to be good. But in any case, some of these we're going to win and some of them we're going to lose. And this draft was okay, not great. Our draws were okay to bad. And we didn't win a lot. And it'd be that way sometimes.
It sure does be that way.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.